I've lived in Washington State 2 different times throughout my life. Once when I was younger, and then again later as an adult. After I moved back in 2016 as an adult, I was quite sure that I was going to be staying there for good. And I had no plans to leave. The cost of living in Vancouver, Washington at the time was very affordable. There's no income tax for the state of Washington. Oregon doesn't have a sales tax, so because we were so close to the border, anytime we wanted to make a big purchase like TV or refrigerator, washer and dryer, we would just hop over to Oregon and we could save on sales tax over there. Not to mention, Portland and Seattle were both very close to us. So as far as restaurant or entertainment options, we had plenty. Seattle obviously has the professional sports, which was nice. And not to mention the Pacific Northwest in general has so much outdoor activities that you can take part in. So if you are an active person, you have plenty to do in that area. But soon that would all change. And those changes would not only force me, but many others to leave the state and look for more freedoms and a better way of life. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, The Realtor You Know. My name is Mike. I'm a local realtor here in the Boise, Idaho area. And on this channel, I try to answer all of your Idaho real estate related questions in the hopes I can give you a good understanding of what it's actually like to live in Idaho. Now in today's video, we are going to be discussing the top 3 reasons why not only me and my family decided to leave Washington, but why so many are choosing to leave the evergreen state for the gem state of Idaho. I do help a lot of people relocate from Washington, Oregon, and California. They all tell me how much time they spent researching the different states that they potentially wanted to move to. And I experienced that back in 2020, 2021, when we decided to make our move from Washington to Idaho. So I'm hoping this video will shed some light on what it's like to actually live in Idaho. Hopefully it makes your decision process a lot easier. My wife and I were married at the end of 2019, and we were expecting our first child in April of 2020. And like most parents, we're just trying to prepare the best we can so when we bring that child home, at least everything on the home front is in order and we can deal with the unknowns as they present themselves. But then COVID happened. And we all know that was a crazy time. But depending on how your local and state officials reacted to the situation would ultimately have an impact on our day-to-day lives. And let me just say this, Washington State went off the deep end. And as Washington State started to impose more restrictions and lockdown measures, I realized how important it is to have strong leadership in those roles that will rely on the Constitution to govern and not their political or personal beliefs. Right after we had our daughter in April of 2020, this is essentially when the world started to lock down. And my wife and I lost both of our jobs. We were deemed unessential, whatever the heck that means. But once the government realized just how much revenue the real estate industry generates for the state, they quickly reconsidered our status and said we were essential again. Isn't that funny? So on the one hand, it was nice. I was able to go back to work and provide for my family. My wife, she never ended up getting her jobs back, but ultimately she had decided that she wanted to stay home and be with our daughter full time. But being forced to wear a mask everywhere you go, and then if you don't, having people yell at you, was not enjoyable. Even though our daughter was young, we still wanted to take her out to parks and go do fun activities with her to get her outside, because we all know how cooped up we were during those first couple years of COVID, and we couldn't even take her to parks. All the parks were shut down with caution tape wrapped around it. And putting up with these restrictions day in and day out for long periods of time finally took a toll on us. And I don't know about y'all, but it did not feel like the America that I had grown up in. And this is what initially got me and my wife thinking that maybe Washington State was not going to be somewhere that we were going to stay long term. And this started the spark as far as looking at alternative areas to live and raise our young growing family. I started looking at different options on my off time. And you know, I was born and raised in Lewiston, Idaho. So I kind of had an understanding of what Idaho was like. Granted, it had been over a decade since I had been back, so things changed. And I felt like I had the typical classic like American childhood, and that's what I wanted for my daughter. And so that definitely put Idaho at the top of our list to begin with. Real quick guys, I just want to say thank you so much for watching and subscribing. It seriously means a lot. The channel has seen some awesome growth in the last few weeks. I'm hoping we can keep it going, and it's all because of you, so thank you. If this is your first time coming to the channel, my name is Mike. I'm a local realtor here in the Boise, Idaho area. I was born and raised in Idaho, yet I've lived in other states like Washington and California. My family and I moved back just a couple years ago. By far the best best decision we could have made. And I would like to share that with you and share what it's like to live in Idaho. It's a fantastic place. It gets overlooked a lot, but it has so much to offer, and the clients that I help relocate to the area absolutely love it. So if you are considering moving, or maybe you know someone that is, definitely feel free to reach out to me and my team. We'd be more than happy to chat with you, get to know you, and figure out what's bringing to Idaho and how we can get you here. Now, I do always leave a free relocation guide in the description below. Feel free to check that out, but let's get back into the video. The second reason we left Washington is because of really bad politics and bad leadership. Now, before 2020, I wasn't really into politics. I had never voted, nor had I paid very much attention to it. But once you start to have a family, a house, a job, things start to change. COVID would also play a role in getting me more politically active. During COVID, our local officials put mandates into place that encouraged crime and homelessness, which we saw explode in Washington and Oregon. Portland, which is just 10-15 minutes south of Vancouver, Washington, had riots for almost 100 nights straight. They lit cars and buildings on fire. Just driving around in Portland at certain periods of the day could be dangerous because you could get involved in a protest where cars were surrounded and damaged. The worst part is, hardly anyone would ever get arrested or see criminal charges, and the local officials encouraged this childish behavior. Another major issue we had with Washington was their stance on firearms. They are a very anti-2A state, and that just didn't sit right with me. Now, my first introduction to firearms is really when I joined the Army at the age of 20. I joined as an infantryman, so I got to handle a lot of different types of firearms. And I saw very quickly when I deployed overseas to Afghanistan, and I saw very quickly that the bad guys with the guns had the power over the local populace. And as I learned more and more about our forefathers and what they went through to secure that right and that freedom for us, it only solidified me, especially as I've gotten older in age, that any government that would infringe on the people's right to keep and bear arms is not a government of the people. And yet Washington State consistently votes to take those rights away. And to add insult to injury, the cost of living has skyrocketed since the pandemic. If you look at the median home value just a decade ago, it was just under $400,000, and in 10 years time, it is now over $600,000. We saw home values rise over 140%, which is an insane number for most Americans to try to keep up with if they want to afford a home, especially when the wages in Washington have only gone up 27.5% in the same amount of time. And with all those negatives just stacking up and compounding, the homelessness, the crime, the unaffordable housing, the low wage growth, that really, I'd say, pushed me and my wife to seriously consider leaving the state of Washington. Now, the third reason why we decided to leave Washington State was for a better way of life. Now, by mid-July or August of 2020, me and my wife had decided 100% we were leaving Washington State. And the thing was, we didn't know really where we were gonna go. We had a couple options in mind. We were looking at Texas, we were looking at Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho was definitely at the top of our list. So to help us make our decision, we decided to make up a list of non-negotiables for us, and the state had to have them, otherwise we weren't gonna move there. And safety was number one. After dealing with all the riots, the crime, the drugs that Washington State offered, we knew we wanted to be far away from that. Number two on our list was more freedoms. We didn't want a government forcing us to wear masks, telling us how to raise our kids, or infringing on our rights. And we also wanted to be around more like-minded individuals. Cost of living is also very important to us. Now, at that time, 2020, 2021, it did seem like prices of everything were on the rise throughout the country, but there were some states where things were still significantly cheaper and more affordable than in Washington. So my wife and I, we went through our list of wants, and Idaho remained at the top of the list. So in 2021, we made a couple trips to Idaho and to different areas to see which area we would like best, and that would, accommodate what we were looking for. We found that Boise and the Boise area really had most of what we were wanting and checked a lot of our boxes for us. And not to mention, the people here in Idaho are just so friendly. I know most of my neighbors by name. We sit, chat, or have a cold beer on the weekend. It's a really nice family environment, which that is one thing that was big on our list as well. We wanted to have kids and other young families that we could hang out with so our kids could have that normal American, childhood growing up. And I remember the thing that sold us on Idaho. It was one of our last visits, and we were in downtown Nampa. It was middle of summer, it was beautiful weather. They had this bluesy guitarist playing live music, and our daughter was maybe a little over 1. She was just walking. We're all sitting out on the patio, enjoying the great weather, trying to finalize our decision. Like, are we really gonna say Idaho is it? Because if so, we need to get going on it. And I remember while we're talking, our daughter walks over to the stage of where this guy is playing his blues guitar, and she just starts jamming and rocking out. And it was funny because everyone on the inside of the restaurant, everyone out in the patio with us, all started just laughing and cracking up because it was just the funniest thing. I was crying at one point. It was so funny. And it was in that moment, I think, where we realized, like, this is the place for us. This is where we want to call home. This is where we want to raise our family. And it checked off all of our boxes. And we made our decision that night, I believe. Idaho was it. And I'll be honest with you guys, if there was one regret we have from moving to Idaho, it was that we didn't do it soon enough. And I know I'm not the only one in that boat. I have clients that tell me that over and over. They wish they would have moved here sooner. Granted, prices were a lot better way back in the day too, but their quality of life has improved so much. And that's what people tell me is the quality of life when they get here and they get about a year into Idaho, they finally have that moment of, I can just relax and breathe. You're not stuck in that rat race. You don't have all that stress built up on your shoulders. It's just an easier way of life here, slower pace, and it's so much more enjoyable. Well, there you have it. Top 3 reasons why we left Washington State for Idaho. If you live in Washington State and any of this resonates with you, I'd love to speak with you and tell you all about Idaho to see if it might be a good fit for you. And what are your thoughts on the 3 reasons why we left Washington? Does it make you want to avoid Idaho and maybe look at other conservative states? Or does it make you want to come in and join in on the fun? If you would like to know more about Idaho and what it has to offer, consider liking and subscribing and clicking that bell for notifications so you never miss out on when a new video is uploaded. And if you or someone you know is looking to relocate to the area, please don't hesitate to reach out. Also, be sure to check out my relocation guide down in the description below. Again, it's got a lot of great info on Idaho, what it's like to live here, and how to get that relocation process started. But guys, that's all I got for you in this video. I'll see you in the next one.